Welcome to the For Real Though Show, the podcast with a purpose for the peoples. I am your host, Christopher Keith. Thank you for joining me. As always, please like, subscribe, do all of the things. Appreciate you. And so we're going to talk about just a little bit about finding your greatness. And before we get there, as we talk about it, I just want to say that I really miss talking to you all. I really do. And as much as I enjoy this platform, I do have a 9 to 5 job. Which is really like a 7 to 4 or 7 to 5 job, depending on the day. And I have my own business. So, I got responsibilities and have to take care of my own customers, as well as the customers of the man that I work for. Uh, and, it's been a very, busy season for me, fortunately. As I reviewed the last few months, in the month of April, I was open, I was off like an entire day on Easter, and then in May, I was off one entire day for Memorial Day. Otherwise, each day has had some work in it, and most of the time, both forms of work. As a matter of fact, as it is the end of June, I was off today because it's a Saturday as I record, and it rained all night Friday. So all of my work that was scheduled for today was canceled. So, otherwise, like I said, man, each day has had a lot of, work in it. And, the thing is that this is a space, this podcast is sharing that we do. It's a space that I really love and I respect. I respect you guys as viewers, and, everything I do in my life, I really try to be excellent in it. And when it comes to the For Real Though show, if I can't prepare you a good meal, I'm just not going to serve it to you. I'm not going to just give you anything. So I thank you for sticking with me. And, the way the schedule's looking now, the next couple months, I will be able to provide more consistent content. As a matter of fact, I'm happy to tell you that my schedule has not prevented me from taking many notes on various subject matters to share with you. I actually take a notebook with me when I'm in the field out there doing my work. And if my notebook isn't readily available, I take notes on notepads, random pieces of paper, or wherever I can, scrap something up. One thing I learned is that when it comes to creatives, ideas are a gift, but they are not a given. And I'm sure I have forgotten many a great idea because failed to write them down, at least sketches of notes or something, or details to, be able to reference my mind back to. I remember one of the things Michael Jackson said, when he was in his creative process, and people was like, "Yo, Mike, you gonna, get some rest?" He's like, "No, I gotta flush these ideas out because if I don't, God might give them to Prince." You know, so it was just that serious. The fact of the matter is, there are so many ideas out here, and somebody's gotta, process them out. Everyone's not, all of them are not for me. There's, many other vehicles, including yourself, or where these ideas can come through. But some come to me, and I believe when it does, then it's my duty to bring them to you. So, one day it'd be cool, just to get paid to do this, um, or something like it, because it's really cool to get paid to do something that you love, and it's not that I don't, I definitely love the job I do with my own business, I definitely love that. Uh, but sharing and connecting with people, that is what I love the most. And even with the job that I have in terms of my own business, that's what I get the most out of it, being in the moment and sharing with people, who have something at stake, sharing and participating in something that means something to other people. So, but as far as the podcast, man, I know I still need to learn a lot more about promotion, editing and stuff like that. But what I've focused on mostly is just, the material and the work itself. And I feel like at the end of the day, if the work is solid and it helps people, then I'm here for it, and at the end of the day, that's the ultimate compensation. Okay. So, this is, part of my purpose and destiny for this earth, is to share knowledge and bring clarity to humans in what has become a very convoluted and confusing environment. Uh, There was a time when, we prioritized and valued, critical thinking, curiosity, But nowadays, that's changed, to, oversimplification, gaslighting, rage baiting, flat out lies, insincerity, and intellectual dishonesty. That's something that's one of my pet peeves is intellectual dishonesty. If you believe something, if you are that thing, then just own that thing, but don't be playing in our faces. You know what I'm saying? Far too many people be playing in our faces. Shout out Van Jones. Just had to say that. um, but it's just taking a toll over the culture, Um, not just a thing, to pick and choose from time to time. It's just been, a constant, like, so for instance, we all like a little smut, a little pettiness from time to time. And and we all need that. You know what I'm saying? Everything ain't meant to be super serious and stuff. We need breaks. We need our pettiness. We need our entertainment and whatnot. And so, I'm not much for reality TV, but I know a lot of really intelligent people who look at the various housewife shows and stuff like that. And they'll readily admit that it's used as a distraction, and a break, from all the other serious, matters and meaningful work that they invest in day to day. Kind of like me watching sports, the NBA. Shout out to the Knicks for winning the championship, or House of Dragon. Shout out Sheep Stealer. If you know, you know. But if you add a less curious thinking society and combine that with the crack addicts, which we are with these phones and technology, then, it's an epidemic of, epic proportions, that puts us in danger in so many ways as a collective. And it affects everything, whether we know it or not. Like our nation is really like in danger, as far as the nation we have known as we have known it. A lot has changed. And I'm not going to get into that today, but it affects everything whether we know it or not. And the truth of the matter is that, weak thinkers create weak communities, which create weak workers, weak politicians, weak clergy, you name it. And if you want to survive, we're going to have to be intentional with doing the work to resist going along with the crowd and, towards our own destruction. And, that's kind of the foundation I want to share with you today. I've always been a big fan of excellence. I don't care what that excellence entails. It could be Prince on a guitar solo, Michael's singing voice, writing of a television program, acting, masonry, architecture, you name it. There's something about quality work, that really excites and inspires me. As a matter of fact, like sometimes I'm just in total awe of someone's talent and, their ability being displayed. There are so many, forms of excellence. And when you combine a natural gift with intention and work ethic, then you really got something special. And, this is the intentional direction that I am going in with this show. It doesn't mean that I won't come in here with sometimes and be silly or petty or just show up here for a good time. Like I said, we all human and we need balance. And, but what I'm saying is, I know where my greatness lies, which is where my passion is. And, I'm going to share something I saw the other day. Speaking of excellence and passion, I went to a community event the other day. It was like a week-long thing. It was like a girl dad event that they had. It was uh, very useful. Um, and I went and checked it out. And the highlight of this particular event, though, was a conversation, like a fireside chat with media media person Roland Martin and Congresswoman Joyce Beatty of Ohio. So, yeah, before I get to that, let me tell you, the Congresswoman is a beast. She is serious about serving her constituents, and by the way, she was the one person really responsible, for the lawsuit that removed the criminal in chief's name from the Kennedy Center. I don't know if y'all heard about that, but yeah, she did that. She was the only one that stood in the gap for that, along with those attorneys, to file that lawsuit. And, it's not to say that politicians are our friends because they are a delivery system, but you can get a really down, dope ass politician, and Joyce Beatty is that. I'm really looking at her work and her track record. She is about that life, so I want to give her props. You know, and so in terms of Roland, I followed him for the last few years. More so once he started the Black Star Network. I really wasn't watching him much when he was on cable TV. But, once he started the Black Star Network and started streaming his own platform, then I really, got more and more into his content. And he has a real great grasp on, politics, history of politics, and he consistently speaks truth to power, whether you agree with him or not. Because he owns his own show, it's independent media, he can say what needs to be said without being censored, or fired. When he was with CNN, MSNBC, and places like that, they had, producers, obviously, um, people who could tell them, executives, people who could say, no, we're not going to say that. We're not going to do that. We're not going to run this story and stuff like that. And so now he doesn't have anyone in the control room now that can cut his mic because it's his mic and it's his control room. And during this conversation, they had I want to show you a moment that, really hit home for me. And it wasn't necessarily like really just what he said, because I heard him tell this particular story before. Uh, it was the depth, logic, and simplicity of what he said regarding a very complex subject relating to voter turnout, and it's specifically voter turnout in the Black community where, we have a high amount of numbers, but not a lot of voter participation. And so I'm going to share a little video of this event, in this part that really hit me, that I want to share with you. And it may be a bit long. It's going to run a couple minutes, but I think it's important for you to get the full context. I'm invoking fair use, YouTube, fair use to share this clip. And, I get to the summation of why I want to talk about this, after the video and why I think, this is greatness. So here, let's share this part with you and we'll come back.
So I need you to understand. It's not just your vote, but the question is, and I'm gonna go back to what you said when you ran, you said you got all 18%. I need you to understand also why we're losing. 2008, 2012, you had massive Black turnout with the election of Obama. The 2012 election was the first time in American history by percentage more Black people voted than white people. First time in history. I'm trying to, the reason my book is White Fear, because they not only saw that, they also saw the changing in terms of the demographics. They'll be a minority by 2043. So you have to understand, the problem is since 2012, our numbers have gone down, 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 down. It went up in 2020 only because it was COVID, they expanded access to the ballot. It goes down in 2024. So what does that mean? What does it mean? It means that we simply are not voting our number. Congressman Harold Washington was elected the first Black mayor of Chicago because 85% of all eligible Black voters voted. There were some precincts by noon, 100% had already voted. They literally were like, can we go home? Why are we still open? And they said, no, by law, you got to stay open. Why is that important? Because we have to look at numbers. We have to look at what's turnout, not percentage, turnout, raw numbers. So when I was here in 2024, I was in Cincinnati, and we were and I've been telling this to D9 other places. So I'm at a Black-owned restaurant, because whenever we travel, we only go support Black-owned restaurants. And I'm in the restaurant. A brother comes up to me. He's an alpha. He said, hey, man, we're going to be at the Bengals game tomorrow doing voter registration. I said, why? He said, what do you mean? I said, okay, you're going to be in the parking lot doing voter registration. I said, you're going to be out there 4 or 5 hours. how many people are you actually going to see? And he goes, I don't understand. I said, this is what you need to do. You need to go to the Board of Elections. You can go on the website. You need to pull the 5 or 10 largest black voting precincts in Cincinnati. Then look at the last state election and the federal election to see how many people in each precinct were eligible to register, eligible to vote. Then look at how many were registered. Then look at how many actually voted. That's your low-hanging fruit. And then what you do is go door to door in that precinct. I said the amount of time you're spending at a game means nothing. You could literally be impacting 200, 300, 400 in these precincts. The reason Trump controls the House is they won the House in those races by a total of 7,000 votes. See, we keep thinking this is no. 7,000. They have what, a 1 or 2 seat majority. 7,000 votes was the difference in them controlling the House. When you start looking at numbers, a black woman would be the Supreme Court Justice in North Carolina, Sherry Beasley, if she had gotten 402 votes. She lost by 401 votes. You just had an election in Florida. A Democrat was elected mayor in one of the cities there, won by about 12 votes. What you're seeing across in Virginia, I think in 2018, there was an actual tie between the two candidates. The name had to be pulled out of a hat, and not only did that determine who won, that also determined who controlled the Senate. So that pulling them out of the hat controlled the entire, who controlled the legislature. So why is that important? We're not voting our capacity. Who votes the most? If you're 65 or older, raise your hand. You are the highest voted. You turn out more than anybody else. If you're 55 to 64, raise your hand. You're number 2. If you're 45 to 54, raise your hand. You're number 3. If you are 35 to 44, raise your hand. All right. Now I want y'all turn the lights up, please. No. Follow me here. Follow me here. Again, 65 plus, raise your hand. Okay. 55 to 64, raise your hand. 45 to 54, raise your hand. 35 to 44, raise your hand. All right. No, hold up. Follow. I'm going somewhere. 28 to 34, raise your hand. Okay, hold up. Wait. 18 to 27, raise your hand. All right, so here's why I just did that. You just witnessed how I started at 65 plus, more hands went up, and as we went down, fewer hands went up. That's actually the voter turnout.
There it is.
So the issue that we have right now in numerous places, we're not voting our capacity. We're leaving 10, 12, 15, 18, 20, 30, 40, 100,000 votes at home. Georgia had a gubernatorial election a couple of years ago. 900,000 of 1.1 million black folks did not vote. 616,000 North Carolina did not vote. So our issue is we have power that's untapped. We have power that we're not accessing. And what we're doing is we're waiting for somebody else to go do the work, when that is not how we're going to change this. And so we have the ability. What should be happening now, this is June. You've got July, August, September. You should be in what I call the inform, educate, enlighten, and empower stage. There should be every week somewhere in Columbus, Politics 101 at a church, at a community group. Then you find out what's the voter registration deadlines. Now you focus on that. Now once the deadline hits, when does early voting start? And then when is the election? Now let's do the same thing in Montgomery. Look at our vast resources. How many churches and community groups have buses and vans? No, we're going to take folks to the poll.
That's old school.
Right. So I need us to get out of this idea that this is voter mobilization. This by itself is not voter mobilization. You have to actually talk to people. If a person says, man, I ain't voting, this is real simple. This is all you have to say is, no, I'm telling you, if somebody said, that stuff don't matter, it's not impacting my life. You have to say, I want you to understand, your birth certificate is a government document. Your public high school diploma, your immunization shots, those are government documents. You went to a public school, your diploma is a public document. If you went to a state college, that's a government document. When you got married, that's a government document. When you get divorced, that's a government document. When you die, your death certificate is a government document. So we have to get people to understand government touches every facet of your life.
Exactly.
But we have to ask them, what are the 3 things you care about? And then walk them through. We have to be connecting the dots in order to educate folk. So we are assuming people know. How many times, Congresswoman, she's heard it, man, the CBC, man, they don't do a damn thing. Not even understanding that a CBC member can be sitting on a committee and literally can remove a line in a bill that can completely alter the bill. So the point, if you're not present, then, or if they change these seats and you got a Republican sitting in there, then you don't have somebody going, hold up, we can't do that. If Democrats get control, and this is not a Democrat-Republican thing, this is a black thing. See, the political system is a delivery system. So you have to decide who can deliver more things to me, them or them. If they are anti-black, meaning Republicans, they surely not going to deliver anything to me. So if this is a delivery system, I'm going to vote for the Democrat, but then hold them accountable to bring back what I asked for. So when Congresswoman Beatty, Democrats control the House, she now sits over the committee on House Financial Services that will be dealing with banks. So she's now questioning, see, so folk need to understand, and it's not just Ohio. She's now challenging them, the national banking policy, the national housing policy. In every facet, she can sit here and say, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, what is your spending on external law firms, on external accounting firms? What are your contracting? Not just board members, what's your black on media advertising? That's how expansive it is. So we need to understand what political power actually does for us.
Let me just jump in here because
All right, so we'll stop it right there. But I hope you get the point. Like that, I mean, dude was ranting, but at the same time, that was a master class. It was a master class on how to get people, how to schematically check out a space, in a neighborhood, in a precinct to see, how to get the voters, like knowing where to go and who to target and how to do it. And then to be able to talk about just historically the numbers and stuff like that from all these different states. Hey man, that was incredible. Like that was just like, I mean, look, you talk about somebody, you just witnessed somebody giving succinct, extremely useful information, dealing with a very complex subject matter, presented a game plan based in logic, data, science, and broke it down to where a middle school student can digest it. Now I was there, and I watched this part of the video a couple times, and you may not realize this, but that breakdown, like, it was like that explanation was like Hendrix playing the guitar, man, or Sidney Poitier in The Raisin in the Sun. That was art, and that's how that this person is doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. Of course, it takes a lot of hard work, experience, to be able to spit this stuff off the dome. But you just saw what I saw, and so, that brings me, to my passion and the intentional direction that, I'm intending to take, as we go forward with the For Real Though show. And it's not to say that my material hasn't been moving in this direction. I believe it has for the most part. But now, instead of it being like a natural inclination, I can add a direct intentionality to it, and lock in purposefully, you know. And when I think about it, if I ask myself what I feel are the most important things I can offer, where my passion lies, and m- in most in bringing conversations, in this platform, it's dealing with the following. Number one, I would say nuance. We don't have enough of that. Far too many conversations are, flat, black and white, where a lot of these grays are left out, very flat narratives and stuff. Uh, Reasonable, sensitive, and consistent narratives, that continue to search for the highest attainable truth, you know, possible for that time and space, the highest attainable truth possible, because as we learn more and live more, we know more, right? So just like I like talked about, before, with phone technology or with TV technology, when they gave us the black and white TV, that was the best we had, but they didn't stop there. They just kept going. And so that's what we want to do. For whatever truth I got, that's the ultimate in that space. For what I know, we give it to you. We'll talk about it. We'll share it together and get there together. You know, and as I said earlier, we live in a time in America where, real, honest, truthful information, it's an endangered species at this level. you know. And understand this, it's not just about me and my personal walk or what I'm doing on this platform. We need everybody, everybody to walk in their greatness. What musicians call, being in a pocket, think of the pocket as the groove, that groove that catches you and keeps you moving, and that groove, is where everybody gets in, everybody gets in and flows and it tracks, it tracks when you experience in the groove. So it doesn't matter how old you are, young you are, you're here, and so you got time to develop that gift and that calling, that those muscles. And even in the space I'm in now, I'm gonna tell you, I'm willing to dive deep. I want to make mistakes. It's cool. Some of the coldest lyrics, beats, and memorable acting scenes. Some signature portions of the greatest art you have ever witnessed are a result of mistakes. Miles Davis said he told I don't know if it was Herbie Hancock, I forget who it was, but the guy made a mistake. He said, "Sorry, sorry, Miles, I made a mistake." He's like, "If you make a mistake, make it again." Because you just never know, right? Sometimes stuff just comes out and you didn't even expect it to come out, right? But you got to get in line and you got to into the flow of your space just so you can have access to that energy, right? And so, to get here, man, you really need to know yourself. You really need to locate where your passion lies, and I mean know yourself in a serious way, not just the results of what you react to, because most of us, we know a portion of ourselves and we know what gets us to react, but we don't know like the really deep treaties of, you know, why we react that way. You got to learn what gives you peace, you know, even in the midst of conflict and war. And again, knowing where your passion lies and starting there. I'm at the point now where even when I'm working out in the field doing my thing, I am living and breathing. When I'm living and breathing the most authentic portions of myself in that moment, like it is the most beautiful thing in the world. It's like it's perfection. And I don't know. Sometimes there have been times recently where I was out there working in my business and I was in the moment, and it was like euphoric. You know what I'm saying? It was like I could have been raptured right there because I was so locked in and had such satisfaction in realizing the space that I was in. It was just a beautiful thing. So, anyway, not gonna keep you much longer, but I hope it makes some sense to you. I thank you for joining me here. And like I said, remember to do all the things, so this platform can grow. Don't cost you a dime, just a small amount of time. And finally, you know, uh, accept, man, even in these times are tough. They can be very difficult, but life is an adventure, and sometimes life be lifing, you know. Yet, in the midst, hey man, be good to yourself, and always seek and find a level of joy and gratitude. Okay. So until next time, I'm not gonna be here. I got a lot of work coming the next 7 days, next 8 days. So, I'm gonna release this probably on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then expect, some more materials for July. So again, thank you for staying with me. Thank you. Appreciate you. Uh, and we'll just keep it moving, okay? Stay great. Stay great. I love you guys. Stay safe. Peace.